The morning sun rose over Harmony Colony like it did every other day. Children ran through the streets on their way to school. Farmers checked their crops in the fields outside the main settlement. Doctors and nurses began their shifts at the small hospital near the center of town. It was a quiet life on Nova Terra, far from Earth, but the 50,000 people who called this place home had built something beautiful here. Dr. Lisa Grant stood at the window of her office in the colony hospital. She held a cup of coffee in her hands and watched the people below going about their lives. She had moved here 3 years ago to help build the medical center from nothing. Now it served the entire colony, and she felt proud of what they had accomplished together. Her assistant, a young man named Danny, knocked on her door. "Dr. Grant, your first patient is ready in room 4. Lisa smiled and set down her coffee. "Tell Mrs. I will be right there." She never made it to room 4. The first explosion shook the building so hard that Lisa fell to the floor. The lights flickered and went out. Emergency alarms began screaming throughout the hospital. Lisa pulled herself up and looked out the window again. What she saw made her blood turn cold. Ships filled the sky. Dozens of them, massive and dark, hung over the colony like birds waiting to feed. They were not human ships. Lisa had seen pictures of alien vessels before, but nothing like these. These ships were built for war. Another explosion hit somewhere to the east, then another, then another. The ground shook without stopping as fire rained down from the sky. Lisa ran into the hallway. Nurses and doctors were rushing in every direction. Patients screamed for help. The ceiling cracked above them and pieces of concrete fell like deadly rain. "Everyone to the basement," Lisa shouted. "Move now." She grabbed a young mother carrying a baby and pulled her toward the stairs. More people followed. They ran down into the darkness below the hospital as the world above them came apart. The bombardment lasted for 2 hours. Lisa sat in the basement with 60 other people listening to the thunder above. Children cried, adults prayed. Some just sat in silence, their faces empty with shock. There was nothing they could do but wait. When the sounds finally stopped, Lisa climbed the stairs alone. She pushed open the door at the top and stepped into what remained of the hospital. Half the building was gone, collapsed into rubble and fire. She walked through the destruction toward the front entrance, stepping over broken glass and fallen walls. Outside, Harmony Colony no longer existed. Every building she could see had been destroyed. Fires burned everywhere. Bodies lay in the streets, in the ruins, in places where homes and schools and shops had stood just hours ago. The ships still hung in the sky, silent now, watching their work. Lisa fell to her knees. She could not breathe, she could not think. All those people, all those families, gone. A hand touched her shoulder. She looked up and saw Danny standing beside her. His face was covered in dust and blood, but he was alive. "Dr. Grant, we found a cargo shuttle," he said. His voice was shaking. "It was in a storage building that did not get hit. We can get some people out." Lisa forced herself to stand. There would be time to grieve later. Right now, she had to save whoever she could. They gathered the survivors from the basement and moved through the burning streets toward the shuttle. Along the way, they found others hiding in the ruins. By the time they reached the shuttle, they had 112 people. 112 out of 50,000. The shuttle was old and damaged, but it could fly. Lisa helped load the wounded inside while Danny worked on the engines. Above them, the alien ships began to move, drifting away from the colony like they had finished a simple chore. "Who are they?" someone asked. "Why did they do this?" Lisa looked up at the departing ships. She had heard stories about the Empire, a powerful alien civilization that took whatever they wanted from weaker species. Humans had never had any conflict with them before. There had been no warning, no demands, no communication at all. They had simply appeared and started killing. The shuttle lifted off just as the last of the alien ships disappeared into the darkness of space. Lisa sat by a small window and watched Harmony Colony grow smaller below them. Smoke rose from the ruins in great black columns. Nothing moved in the streets. Nothing lived. A woman beside her was trying to send a message on a damaged communication device. "Please," she said, "we have to tell Earth, we have to tell someone." Lisa took the device and helped her find a working frequency. Together, they recorded a message. Lisa spoke slowly and clearly, describing what had happened, who had attacked them, how many had died. She included footage from the shuttle's cameras showing the destruction below. "This is Dr. Lisa Grant of Harmony Colony," she said at the end. We need help, please. If anyone can hear this, we need help. The message went out into space, traveling at the speed of light toward Earth. It would take hours to arrive. Lisa did not know if anyone would even receive it, but she had to try. The survivors sat in silence as the shuttle flew through the empty darkness. Some held each other. Some stared at nothing. A few children slept in their parents' arms, too young to understand what they had lost. Lisa closed her eyes and saw the faces of everyone she had known on Nova Terra. Her colleagues at the hospital, her neighbors, the patients she had treated, the children she had watched grow up. All gone. 47,000 people erased in a single morning by an enemy that did not even consider them worth a warning. Far across the galaxy, the Galactic Council received a report about the attack. High Counselor read it with mild interest and set it aside. A minor territorial dispute involving the primitive humans, nothing that concerned the greater galactic community. They were valuable allies, and humans were barely worth noticing. He did not give it another thought. On Earth, the distress signal arrived 6 hours later. Within minutes, it had been and forwarded to every government on the planet. Within an hour, every news channel was broadcasting the footage. Within a day, 7 billion people had seen what they had done to Harmony Colony. The world watched in silence, and then the silence ended. The United Nations building in New York had never been so full. Every seat was taken. Every leader was present. For the first time in human history, there were no arguments, no political games, no disagreements between nations. They had all seen the footage from Harmony Colony. They had all heard the screams. Senator Ben Harper stood at the podium and looked out at the assembly. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 30 years in politics, fighting small battles and making small compromises. Today was different. Today, there was only one thing to discuss. 3 days ago, the Empire attacked our colony on Nova Terra, he said. His voice was calm but heavy with grief. They gave no warning. They made no demands. They simply appeared in orbit and began killing our people. 47,000 men, women, and children died in 2 hours. They were farmers, teachers, doctors, children who had never harmed anyone. He paused and let the silence fill the room. The Galactic Council has been informed of this attack. They have chosen to do nothing. They consider us too weak and too unimportant to deserve justice. They are a powerful member species, and we are just humans. A low murmur passed through the assembly. Ben raised his hand for quiet. I have a proposal for this assembly, a single resolution that requires the vote of every nation. I am asking for authorization to respond to this attack with the full military power of Earth. Not tomorrow, not after more discussion. Now. The vote took less than an hour. Every nation voted yes. There was no debate, no opposition, no hesitation. Humanity had made its choice. Admiral Jack received the news at his home in Virginia. He was 62 years old and had been retired for 3 years. He had commanded naval forces in 4 conflicts and had never lost a battle. When the call came asking him to lead the Earth Retribution Fleet, he accepted without a moment of thought. How many ships do we have? He asked during his first briefing at the Pentagon. The answer surprised even him. For decades, Earth had been building military vessels in secret, hidden from galactic observation. The other species believed humans had only a handful of basic patrol ships. In truth, Earth had a fleet of over 200 advanced warships, equipped with weapons and technology that no one in the galaxy knew existed. We kept them hidden in case we ever needed them, the briefing officer explained. Looks like we need them now. Admiral studied the fleet specifications and nodded slowly. Get them ready. We leave in 1 week. On the other side of the galaxy, Senator Ben Harper arrived at the Galactic Council chambers. The massive hall was filled with representatives from hundreds of alien species. Ben walked to the center of the floor and waited to be recognized. High Counselor looked down at him with 4 large eyes. The counselor belonged to a species called the tall and thin with blue-gray skin. He had led the council for over a century and had seen countless minor species come and go. The human representative may speak, said. Ben stood straight and kept his voice steady. 3 days ago, the Empire murdered 47,000 of our citizens. We come before this council to request justice. We ask that they be held accountable for this unprovoked attack on a peaceful civilian population. A ripple of quiet conversation spread through the chamber. Ambassador On of the Empire stood from his seat. He was a massive creature with thick gray skin and small black eyes. The humans were occupying territory within our sphere of influence, On said. We simply removed them. This is standard practice in galactic affairs. The weak do not dictate to the strong. Ben felt his anger rising but kept it under control. Those were civilians, families, children. You killed them without warning and without mercy. They should not have been there, On replied with a shrug. High Counselor raised one of his long hands. The Council recognizes the tragedy of this event. However, the Empire is a founding member of this body. We cannot take action against them based on a territorial dispute with a minor species. Minor species, Ben repeated quietly. You must understand, continued. Humanity is new to the galactic community. You have limited resources, limited technology, limited military capacity. The wise course of action would be to accept this loss and avoid further conflict with the... Ben looked around the chamber at all the alien faces watching him. Some looked sympathetic, most looked bored or indifferent. He understood now. To them, humans were nothing, just another weak species to be ignored or exploited. I understand, Ben said. The Council will not help us. That is correct, said. Ben nodded slowly. Then Earth will seek its own justice. A few of the alien representatives laughed. Ambassador On made a sound that might have been amusement. You are welcome to try, On said. The Empire has crushed species far more powerful than yours. Your little fleet will burn just like your colony. Ben did not respond to the insult. He simply turned and walked out of the chamber without looking back. 1 week later, the Earth Retribution fleet launched from hidden bases around the solar system. 217 warships gathered in formation around the flagship USS Valor. Admiral stood on the bridge and watched the fleet assemble on the display screens. Captain Kate stood beside him. She was 40 years old with short brown hair and sharp eyes. She had served under years ago and had requested transfer to his command the moment she heard about the mission. All ships report ready, Admiral, she said. Nodded, what about Dr. Grant? She came aboard this morning. She insisted on being here. Had met Lisa Grant 2 days ago. She had lost everything on Nova Terra, but instead of hiding from the pain, she had volunteered to serve as a civilian advisor. She wanted to see justice done with her own eyes. Good, said. She deserves to be here. He turned to face his crew. Every person on the bridge was focused and ready. They all knew what they were fighting for. Set course for space, ordered. Maximum speed. The fleet moved as one, disappearing into faster-than-light travel. The stars stretched into lines of light around them as they raced toward enemy territory. Across the galaxy, the Galactic Council received reports of the human fleet's departure. High Counselor read the intelligence briefing and dismissed it with a wave of his hand. The reports claimed the humans had over 200 ships, which was clearly impossible. Some junior analyst had made an error. He sent a message to the ambassador assuring him there was nothing to worry about. The humans were too primitive to pose any real threat. The military outpost on the moon of Prime had stood for 300 years. It was a fortress of stone and metal built into the gray rock of the moon's surface. 2,000 soldiers lived there, along with 50 warships that patrolled the border of space. No enemy had ever threatened this place. No enemy had ever been foolish enough to try. Commander was eating his morning meal when the alarms began screaming. He dropped his food and ran to the command center. Dozens of soldiers were already there, staring at the display screens with expressions of confusion and fear. Reports demanded. Ships, Commander, one of his officers said. Many ships coming out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of our sensor range. How many? The officer swallowed hard. Over 200, Commander. Pushed through the crowd to look at the screens himself. He could not believe what he was seeing. A massive fleet was approaching the outpost in perfect formation. The ships were unlike anything in the database. They were human ships. That is impossible, said. The humans do not have 200 ships. They do not have 20 ships. This must be an error. It is not an error, Commander, the officer replied. They are real, and they are heading straight for us. Felt the first touch of fear in his chest. He had served in the military for 40 years. He had fought against a dozen different species and had never lost a battle, but he had never seen anything like this. Launch all ships, he ordered. Raise all defensive systems. Send a message to Warlord Al requesting immediate reinforcement. On the bridge of the USS Valor, Admiral watched the enemy outpost grow larger on the display screens. Captain stood at the tactical station, her fingers moving across the controls with practiced speed. Enemy ships launching, reported. 50 vessels, they are forming a defensive line between us and the outpost. Nodded, let them come. All ships maintain formation, wait for my command. The two fleets approached each other across the empty darkness of space. The ships were large and heavily armored, built to crush enemies with overwhelming firepower. The human ships were smaller and faster, designed for precision and coordination. The fired first. Massive energy beams shot across space toward the human fleet. But the human ships were already moving, splitting apart and reforming in patterns that seemed almost impossible. The weapons hit empty space where ships had been moments before. Now said quietly, the human fleet attacked. It was not a battle, it was a demonstration. Human ships struck from every direction at once, targeting weapons systems and engines with surgical accuracy. They tried to respond, but their weapons could not track targets that moved so fast. Their shields could not block attacks that came from so many angles at the same time. In 12 minutes, the defensive fleet was destroyed. Not a single human ship was lost. Commander watched from the command center as his ships exploded one by one on the display screens. His hands were shaking. This could not be happening. The humans were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to be primitive. How were they doing this? Commander, one of his officers said, ground forces are landing. They are breaching the outer walls. Grabbed his weapon and ran toward the sounds of fighting. If he was going to die today, he would die with a gun in his hands. Commander Sam led the first assault team through the breach in the outpost walls. He was a big man with a face and cold eyes. He had fought in 3 wars on Earth before joining the Space Forces. Nothing scared him anymore. His team moved through the corridors with deadly efficiency. Soldiers tried to stop them, but the humans were faster, better trained, and fighting with a purpose that went beyond orders. They were fighting for the dead of Harmony Colony. Remember, said over the radio, prisoners if possible, we want the ones who gave the orders. They found Commander in the command center, surrounded by the last of his guards. A brief firefight ended with every soldier on the ground and in handcuffs. Stood over the captured Commander and studied him for a moment. You attacked our colony, said. 47,000 people, did you know about that? Said nothing. We are going to find everyone responsible, continued. Every commander, every officer, everyone who gave orders or pulled triggers, and we are going to make them answer for what they did. He turned and walked away, leaving to be processed by his soldiers. 6 hours later, a reinforcement fleet arrived at Prime. 30 warships under the command of a veteran admiral named. They expected to find the human fleet scattered or destroyed. Instead, they found the outpost in human hands and 200 enemy ships waiting for them in perfect formation. The second battle lasted 8 minutes. Admiral's flagship was disabled in the first exchange of fire. His fleet was systematically taken apart, ship by ship, until nothing remained but drifting wreckage and escape pods. Observer L watched the entire battle from a neutral convoy passing through the region. She belonged to a species called the, known throughout the galaxy as historians and of events. She had witnessed many conflicts in her long life, but she had never seen anything like this. She recorded everything, the speed of the human ships, the precision of their attacks, the way they worked together as if they shared one mind, and she recorded the aftermath when human vessels moved through the wreckage to rescue survivors from their escape pods. The humans were not killing everyone. They were taking prisoners. They were being selective, targeting only military forces and leaving civilian vessels untouched. Elle transmitted her recordings to the Galactic Council with a single note attached. You need to see this. High Counselor received the transmission in his private chambers. He activated the display and watched the footage in silence. His 4 eyes grew wider as the battle unfolded. His long hands began to shake. He watched the human fleet tear through the defenses like they were made of paper. He watched ground forces capture a military outpost that had stood for 3 centuries. He watched a reinforcement fleet get destroyed in less time than it took him to eat a meal. When the footage ended, sat in his chair for a long time without moving. He had dismissed the humans as primitive. He had told that there was nothing to worry about. He had been wrong. He summoned an emergency session of the Galactic Council. On the USS Valor, Admiral received reports from all sectors of the battle zone. The outpost was secured. Prisoners were being processed. Supply lines were being established for the push deeper into territory. Dr. Lisa Grant stood at the observation window, looking out at the captured outpost. She felt no joy at the victory, only a cold satisfaction that the work had begun. "This is just the beginning," said, standing beside her. "We have a long way to go." Lisa nodded. "I know, but they are starting to understand now. They are starting to see what happens when you hurt our people." Far away, in the heart of space, Warlord Al received word of the defeats. For the first time in his long military career, he felt something he had never experienced before. Fear, the Earth fleet pushed deeper into territory with each passing day. They moved like a storm through enemy space, striking military targets and supply lines with relentless precision. Admiral planned every attack carefully, choosing targets that would weaken the war machine while avoiding civilian populations. This was not conquest, this was justice. Captain Kate studied the tactical displays in the command center of the USS Valor. The fleet had destroyed 14 military installations in the past 2 weeks. They had captured over 3,000 soldiers and officers, but they had not found the one person they were really looking for. "Any word on Al's location?" asked, stepping into the command center. Shook her head. "Intelligence says he keeps moving, never stays in one place for more than a day. He knows we are hunting him." Nodded slowly. Warlord Al was the commander who had ordered the attack on Harmony Colony. He had given the command to kill 47,000 civilians. Finding him was the primary objective of the entire campaign. "Keep searching," said. "He cannot hide forever." Across the galaxy, the Galactic Council gathered for an emergency session. The Great Chamber was filled with representatives from every major species, all of them talking at once. The mood was tense and uncertain. Everything they had believed about humans had been proven wrong. High Counselor called for silence, and the chamber slowly grew quiet. "We have all seen the reports," said. "The human fleet has proven far more capable than anyone expected. They have won every engagement against forces. The balance of power in that sector has shifted dramatically." Ambassador On stood from his seat, his massive body shaking with anger. "The Council must intervene. These humans are invading our sovereign territory. This is an act of war against a founding member of this body." "You started this war," a voice called from across the chamber. It was a representative from a species called the small creatures with large eyes and quick minds. "You attacked their colony without provocation. You killed their civilians. Now you face the consequences." Murmurs of agreement spread through the chamber. They had made many enemies over the centuries. Some of those enemies were now watching with satisfaction as humans did what they had never dared to do. "We demand the Council send peacekeeping forces," On insisted. "The humans must be stopped." Raised his hand for quiet. "Before we discuss intervention, we will hear from the human representative. Senator Harper, please come forward." Ben Harper walked to the center of the chamber floor. He looked tired but determined. He had been working without rest since the campaign began, coordinating between the fleet and Earth's government. "Thank you, High Counselor," Ben said. "I will be brief. Humanity did not seek this conflict. We came to the stars in peace. We built our colony on Nova Terra because we wanted to explore and grow, not to fight or conquer. They attacked us without warning and killed 47,000 of our people. When we asked this council for justice, you refused. You told us we were too weak and too unimportant." He paused and looked around the chamber. "We are not here to build an empire. We are not here to destroy the civilization. We are here for one reason only, to hold those responsible for the massacre accountable for their crimes. Once the perpetrators are captured and brought to justice, Earth will withdraw from space. You have my word on that." "And why should we believe you?" On demanded. "Because unlike the humans keep their promises," Ben replied calmly. "Look at our actions. We have not attacked a single civilian target. We have not bombed cities or killed innocent people. We have struck only military installations and captured soldiers rather than executing them. We are not monsters. We simply want justice for our dead." The chamber fell silent. Ben's words hung in the air, impossible to argue against. "Spoke carefully. What exactly do you want, Senator Harper? We want Warlord Al and every officer who participated in planning and executing the attack on Harmony Colony. We want them to stand trial for their crimes. That is all. On stepped forward. The Empire will never surrender our military commanders to human justice. Then we will continue our campaign until we find them ourselves, Ben said simply. The choice is yours. Turn to face Ambassador on. The Council cannot intervene in a conflict that your Empire started. They must resolve this matter on their own. On stared at the High Counselor with hatred in his small black eyes. Then he turned and stormed out of the chamber without another word. Back in space, the hunt for Al intensified. Human intelligence operatives had been gathering information from captured officers and intercepted communications. Slowly, a picture was forming. Al was hiding in a secret command station on a small moon deep in territory. The station was heavily defended and nearly impossible to find, but human patience and persistence were paying off. Captain brought the intelligence report to Admiral personally. We found him, she said. He is here. She pointed to a location on the star map. Studied the coordinates. The command station was protected by 3 defense platforms and a patrol fleet. It would be a difficult target, but not impossible. How confident are we in this information? He asked. Very confident, Admiral. Multiple sources confirm it. Nodded slowly. Then we move tomorrow, prepare the fleet. Dr. Lisa Grant heard the news and requested permission to join the ground assault team. Commander was reluctant at first. This is not a safe place for civilians, he told her. I was at Harmony Colony, Lisa replied. I watched Al's ships kill everyone I knew. I need to see this through to the end. I need to look him in the eyes. Studied her face for a long moment. He saw the pain there and the determination. Finally, he nodded. Stay behind my team. Follow every order without question. Understood. Understood. The fleet arrived at the moon in the early hours of the morning cycle. The defense platforms detected them immediately and opened fire, but the human ships were ready. They had planned for this battle for weeks. The attack was swift and overwhelming. Defense platforms fell one by one. The patrol fleet was scattered and destroyed in a matter of hours. Then the ground assault began. Led his team toward the command station entrance. Enemy fire came from every direction, but the human soldiers pushed forward with unstoppable determination. They breached the outer doors and moved into the corridors beyond. Lisa followed behind them, her heart pounding in her chest. The sounds of fighting echoed through the metal hallways. Smoke filled the air, but she kept moving one step at a time. Finally, they reached the command center, and his team blew the doors open and rushed inside. Guards fell quickly under precise human fire. And there, standing in the center of the room, was Warlord Al. He was a massive creature, even larger than On. His gray skin was covered with old battle scars. His small eyes burned with hatred as he watched the humans surround him. So, Al said, his voice like grinding stone, the insects have come for me. Raised his weapon. Warlord Al, by the authority of the United Nations of Earth, you are under arrest for crimes against humanity. You will stand trial for the murder of 47,000 civilians at Harmony Colony. Al laughed. It was an ugly sound. I ordered the deaths of many more than that over my career. Your colony was nothing. Your people are nothing. You are all just insects to be stepped on. Lisa stepped forward. She stood directly in front of the warlord and looked up at him without fear. Those insects just conquered your empire's greatest military commander, she said quietly. And now those insects are going to make you answer for every single life you took. For the first time, something flickered in Al's eyes. Not regret, not remorse, but perhaps finally understanding. He had made a terrible mistake. Warlord Al stood in chains on the bridge of the USS Valor. Commander had secured him personally, using restraints designed to hold creatures far stronger than any human. The warlord had not resisted. Perhaps he had finally realized that resistance was pointless. Admiral stood before the captured commander and studied him in silence. This was the creature who had ordered the deaths of 47,000 innocent people. This was the monster who had looked at human families and seen nothing but insects to be crushed. You will be transported to Earth, said. You will stand trial before a jury of human citizens. The entire galaxy will watch as justice is served. Al made a sound that might have been contempt. Your justice means nothing. I am a warrior. I have killed millions in my lifetime. Your colony was just another number. Dr. Lisa Grant stepped forward. She had been standing in the shadows, watching and waiting. Now she walked up to Al and stood directly in front of him. Let me tell you about some of those numbers, she said. Her voice was calm and steady. There was a woman named Mrs. She was 73 years old. She had lived on Nova Terra for 15 years and spent her days teaching music to children. She was supposed to be my first patient that morning. She died in the hospital when your bombs brought down the roof. Al said nothing. There was a boy named Tommy. He was 8 years old. He wanted to be a pilot when he grew up. He used to run through the streets every morning on his way to school, pretending he was flying a spaceship. His body was found in the ruins of his classroom. Lisa's voice never wavered. There was a young couple who had just gotten married. They were going to have a baby in 3 months. They had already picked out names. They died holding each other in the street while fire rained from the sky. She stepped closer until she was inches from Al's face. Those are not numbers. Those are people. And you are going to learn every single one of their names. You are going to hear every single one of their stories. For the rest of your miserable life, you will know exactly who you killed. For a moment, something flickered in Al's eyes. Not guilt. He was too far gone for guilt. But perhaps for the first time, he understood that his victims had been real. The trial took place 3 months later in a special court built in Geneva. Representatives from dozens of alien species attended as observers. The entire galaxy watched the broadcasts as Al was brought before a panel of human judges. The evidence was overwhelming. Communications records showed that Al had personally ordered the attack on Harmony Colony. Survivor testimonies described the horror of the bombardment. Footage from the colony's security systems showed families running through the streets as death fell from above. Al offered no defense. He sat in silence throughout the proceedings, his small eyes fixed on nothing. The verdict was unanimous, guilty of crimes against humanity on 47,000 counts. The sentence was unusual but fitting. Al would spend the rest of his life in a special prison built just for him. Every day, he would be required to watch recorded testimonies from survivors and family members of the victims. Every day, he would hear the names of the dead and see the faces of those who mourned them. He would never be allowed to forget what he had done. Some called the sentence too lenient. They wanted execution. But the human government had decided that death was too easy. Al had treated his victims as meaningless numbers. Now he would be forced to see them as people until the day he died. The Empire, broken and humiliated, was forced to accept Earth's terms. All officers involved in the Harmony Colony attack were surrendered to human custody. Massive reparations were paid to the families of victims and survivors. The military permanently from the Nova Terra sector and signed a treaty promising to never threaten human territory again. The war was over. Senator Ben Harper returned to the Galactic Council one final time. The chamber was silent as he walked to the center floor. Every representative was watching him with new eyes. High Counselor spoke first. Senator Harper, the Council wishes to formally recognize Earth as a major galactic power. We would like to offer humanity full membership in this body, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. Ben nodded slowly. Earth accepts your offer, High Counselor, but we have one condition. Name it. This council must establish new laws protecting civilian populations. No member species should ever be able to attack unarmed colonies without consequence. What happened to Harmony Colony must never happen again to any species. Considered the request. Several representatives murmured their agreement, though were not the only species who had committed such acts in the past. The Council accepts your condition, said. A new charter will be drafted with your proposed protections. After the session ended, approached Ben privately. I must admit, Senator, I misjudged your species, the High Counselor said. When you first came to us asking for help, I saw only a weak and primitive people. I was wrong. Many have made that mistake, Ben replied. What makes humans so different? Asked. Other species have been wronged before. They accept their losses and move on. Why did humanity refuse to do the same? Ben thought about the question for a long moment. Because we protect our own, he said finally. It does not matter if we are weak or strong. It does not matter if the enemy is larger or more powerful. When someone hurts our people, we do not forget and we do not stop until justice is served. That is who we are. Nodded slowly, his 4 eyes thoughtful. I believe the galaxy is only beginning to understand what that means. Back on Earth, Dr. Lisa Grant returned to a quiet life. She could not go back to medicine. The memories were too painful. Instead, she devoted herself to building a memorial for Harmony Colony. The memorial was constructed on a hill overlooking the ocean. It contained the name of every person who had died in the attack, along with photographs and personal stories submitted by their families. Visitors came from all over Earth to pay their respects. Some came from other planets as well, aliens who wanted to understand what humanity had lost and what they had fought for. Lisa visited the memorial every week. She would walk among the names and remember the people she had known. The pain never went away completely, but it softened over time into something she could carry. One day, a young alien approached her at the memorial. He was barely more than a child by his species standards. I am sorry, he said quietly, for what my people did for everything. Lisa looked at him for a long moment. She saw no hatred in his eyes, only shame and grief. You did not do this, she said. You were not born when it happened. But my people did, and I wanted you to know that not all of us are like Al. Some of us want peace. Lisa nodded slowly. Then help build it, make sure this never happens again. The young promised that he would. Admiral retired from military service and wrote a book about the campaign. He dedicated it to the victims of Harmony Colony and to every soldier who had fought to bring their killers to justice. Captain took command of the USS Valor and continued to serve in the fleet for 20 more years. She became known as one of the finest officers in human history. Commander returned to his family and never spoke about the war again. Some wounds are too deep for words. Years later, a young student sat in a classroom, learning about galactic history. The teacher was explaining the different species of the galaxy and their relationships with each other. Teacher, the student asked, why does our empire never attack human ships, even when they are alone and far from help? The teacher paused for a moment. He remembered the stories his parents had told him about the war with the humans. He remembered the fear in their voices. Because humans do not forget, the teacher said, and they do not forgive. When you harm their people, they will hunt you across the entire galaxy. They will never stop, never rest until justice is served. He looked at his students with serious eyes. There are many species in this galaxy that you do not want as enemies, but the humans are different. Other species will fight you and then make peace. The humans will make you pay for every single life you take. Remember that. The students listened in silence. And somewhere across the stars, the memorial on Earth stood watch over the ocean, holding the names of 47,000 people who would never be forgotten. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Humanity remembers.